I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
Good morning, everyone.
All
June
right.
15th, 2022 meeting of the City Council's called to order. This meeting has been properly noticed and posted in compliance with the open meeting law. These proceedings are being video recorded as well as presented live on KCLV, Cable Channel 2. You may also watch this meeting live on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV on the Go Vegas app. City Council meeting, as well as all other KCLV programming, may be viewed on the internet at www.kclv.tv/live. And congratulations. We can all breathe. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 43, and it's an abeyance item. It's a public hearing and discussion for possible action regarding the monorail agreement between the City of Las Vegas and TBC, the Boring Company, to grant TBC the right to install and operate a monorail in the city. This is a public hearing, but we're going to hear from staff first. So that would be Mr. Cervantes, Mr. Janssen, Mr. Radilla. And I do have cards, so we will do that. I've got cards here from Stephen Thayer, Gary Cray Jr., Russ Geckner, and Mike Park. But anyone else, too, we will have the public hearing. And so, hi, Mr. Janssen.
Mayor, members of City Council, Mike Janssen, Executive Director, pleased to be here today. Before I get started, I want to just point out that presentation we're going to be giving you today, it's going to be done portions by myself and the other portion by our Chief Deputy City Attorney, John Radilla. For the past probably 18 months, John and I have been the primaries working real closely with the Boring Company. And in addition to John and myself, the president of the Boring Company, Steve Davis, is here today, along with his legal team led by Ashley Steinberg and Stephanie Allen. And so without further ado, let me walk you through the presentation we have today, and I'd be happy to do whatever you prefer, whether it's answering questions as we go or answering questions after the public hearing part, whatever is preferable to you. So.
Right, okay.
I think if you do the whole presentation would be best, because knowing you, you always have the answer to things that we think we're so brilliant asking in advance. So do the whole thing. Thank you.
Sounds good, Mayor. Okay, so first I want to give you an overview of this project, and certainly it's a very unique project, not something that typically comes across our desk for a developer to come to the city of Las Vegas, come to Southern Nevada, and propose to build a private transportation system and not be asking for any public funding. And so the agreement that's before you today for your consideration is a 50-year non-exclusive agreement. And I've highlighted the non-exclusive part because, as you all know, the monorail that was originally built behind Convention Center along Paradise, that particular monorail had an exclusive agreement. This one is non-exclusive. What that means is at any time, whether today, tomorrow, or 10 years from now, if somebody else came in and wanted to build a monorail that fit the definition of a monorail, there's no exclusivity here at all. And so I want to make sure that's fully understandable, that this is not an exclusive agreement. Another part of the agreement that I want to walk you through is when this project was proposed, it was proposed looking at not necessarily our city and county lines. It was proposed as a project to service Southern Nevada, Airport Strip downtown. And so at the beginning of the project's proposal, city and the county's teams, we both had our own teams that were the primaries. We were working together from day one on what is this agreement going to look like. And so about 95% of the agreement that's before you today, and which was approved by the County Commission on October 20th, so about 9 months ago. This agreement is about 95% identical. I'm going to focus today on some of the differences that's in that 5%. What it basically allows, what this agreement basically allows, is for the boring company to use our right-of-way. Their ask, this agreement, is can we use your right-of-way to build this private transportation system? And the agreement would allow them to construct it, would allow them to operate it, and would allow them to maintain it, again, highlighting a privately funded underground transportation system. There's been a lot of questions about, how is it being funded? And so I have to highlight this again. There is no taxpayer funds requested from the boring company. Wow. And there's none in this agreement that says we're going to contribute them to this project. All of the funding is from the boring company, and then along the route, private property owners who want a station, they're offering to pay for that station. So again, I want to make sure that's crystal clear from the start of the presentation. What is the Vegas Loop? When you hear the term Vegas Loop, what is it? Well, in a nutshell, it's envisioned, and I say it's envisioned because it's not built yet. It's being proposed. It's envisioned to be a 34 plus mile tunnel network with 55 plus stations, including a connection to Harry Reid Airport and a connection to Allegiant Stadium. 5+ miles and 5+ stations currently would fall within City of Las Vegas jurisdiction. And I use the plus because as we speak, from the beginning of this proposal, the boring company has been looking at how might the system expand. Wow. And I'm going to walk you through some of those conceptual extensions that have been discussed so far, but because they're not finalized yet, what we're looking at today is the 5+ miles of tunnels in the city and 5+ stations in the city. Another really key important part that I want to make sure everyone is aware of is your team, your city team, has treated this project just like we would any developer. Whether a developer came in and wanted to build a high-rise or a developer wants to come in and build a subdivision, they are going to be treated from a permitting inspection process identical. So the boring company will pay all standard plan check, permit, and inspection fees. Just in terms of a rough order of magnitude, depending on that 5+ miles of tunnels, that 5+ stations, those fees could end up being somewhere between $1 and $2 million based on the construction cost of all those elements that would be built in our right-of-way. So again, to be clear, there's no special fee structure here as it relates to permitting and inspection. They will pay all standard plan check permit fees.
Damn, I'm good.
This next slide is kind of an overview of the Vegas Loop. And the one on the right is the overall system as envisioned. And what you'll see from the far end of the map is a connection that shows, and it's dashed, it shows a connection going into the airport. And it shows the system coming west on Tropicana and then working its way north on Las Vegas Boulevard. As it comes into downtown, shortly north of the Strat Hotel, the system would split off into a loop into the downtown area. It would come north on Las Vegas Boulevard, and then it would head west on Ogden. It would then head south on Main Street and work its way back, if you will, creating the loop throughout the Southern Nevada Resort Corridor District. You'll see in this map also some spurs. There are a handful of spurs going west towards Allegiant Stadium and a couple of other key destinations along the way. Quite a few hotels have already been in conversations with the boring company, and as I mentioned earlier, some of the early conversations that I had with Councilman Knudsen, Councilman Diaz is, hey, I don't see a connection to Area 15. Well, I will tell you, that's one of the additional spurs that the boring company would like to see happen. So again, that plus that I mentioned earlier is representative as that this is a project that has the potential to grow if there's a willingness for it to grow to a certain destination. So I wanted you to just see that alignment in the overall picture and the portion that's coming into downtown. One other thing I want to highlight on the downtown portion that is just a coincidence, but it's something that is unique to this. As you know, we're in the process of building Las Vegas Boulevard, rebuilding it, putting in all new utilities. So we have very, very good information on Las Vegas Boulevard as far as where all of our new utilities are. We also just recently rebuilt Ogden. And last but not least, a few years ago, we did a beautiful job on Main Street. So it so happens that we have quite a strong understanding of our roadway network that is primarily being proposed for the portion that's into the downtown area.
All
A lot of
right.
questions I had was, well, what does today mean? What is today's action? And today's action is just one additional step of a multi-step process before a person will ever ride in the Vegas Loop within the city of Las Vegas limits. And I want to walk you through those major steps so you can understand that this doesn't happen overnight. This is a very significant process to get from start to finish. The first step they accomplished back in December of 2020. That was securing a special use permit, following our city code, following our state law. The process to entitle a project like this was to secure a special use permit. So step one, they've secured. Step two is where we're here today. Again, following NRS, following city code, they have to secure approval of a monorail agreement, and again, that's what's under consideration today. If that is approved today, the next step would be for the boring company to approve, to secure approval of what we call design development studies. And those studies, the big ones are the fire and life safety plan, which I'm going to talk about in some significant detail as we move through the presentation. The geotechnical report, we talk about the tunnels. They're underground. They're having to get through all different stratas of soil, groundwater issues, et cetera. Geotechnical report's a very important element of this project. And then drainage analysis. Whenever you have a tunnel underground, with our summer monsoons, with our history of having floods, we have to ensure that that system is going to be protected from any type of flooding activity.
Absolutely.
So those are some of the major design development studies that have to happen next if the agreement was approved today. After that step is completed, the next step would be actually submitting the construction drawings. And following the same process that we have with all of our developers, if someone wants to do something in the right-of-way, whether it's building a driveway, building a storm drain, building a sewer line, or a water line, they will go through that exact same process. So that will be probably a lengthy process to secure approval of what's called the final design. And then when the final design and construction plans are all signed off and approved, they would actually get construction permits to start building this facility. The construction phase is then the next step, quite a significant stage of the development of the project. After the construction phase is completed, they will then move into what's called the operational testing phase. By that, we mean the system has to be tested. The air handling system, the fire alarm system, how the vehicles go through the tunnel, the structural condition of the tunnel from construction activities. Every step of that tunnel will be worked through during what's called that operational testing phase to ensure everything meets the intended design, and if something was missed, it would be captured during that operational testing phase.
Of course.
Then, after the operational testing phase has been completed, they have to get a certificate of operation. That certificate of operation has to be issued every year. The best example that I can give you of what a certificate of operation looks like, there's many of them that are up and down the South Strip, south of Sahara, where you have a variety of people mover systems between some of the hotels. They get operational certificates. In the city of Las Vegas, the closest thing we have would be the rides that are atop the Stratosphere Hotel. They have to get an operational permit issued every year to ensure that they're safe and that they're going to meet all the intended requirements that the permit has attached to them. Last but not least, you get through the certificate of operation, that's when Vegas Loop service can begin. And so, again, I wanted to make sure you saw the major steps that it will take from today to actually, before someone is actually riding in one of these lines. The next slide is really just, kind of, we've talked about, what is this tunnel system? And, Mayor Goodman, you and I talked a lot about our experience reminiscing traveling the subways in New York City. And in a nutshell, this is an express transportation system. Some examples that, maybe you could slightly compare it to is the difference between going on a local subway and an express subway, going on a local bus and an express bus. The difference is, on the locals, you have to stop at every station along the way. On an express, you can get from point A to B much faster. What they're proposing is a tunnel that would allow an express transportation delivery of passengers from point A to B without having to stop at every stop along the way. So as an example, if you were to get on this system at the MGM and you said, I want to come to Fremont Street, you'd be able to go from MGM to Fremont Street without having to stop at all the stations along the way. And that's where there's that time savings. And so again, the point is you can travel directly to your destination without having to stop at intermediate stations. You can stop. I believe the system is going to be set up to where if you come to town with 4 of your buddies and 2 of you are staying at MGM and 2 of you are staying at Strat from the airport, 2 of you can get off at MGM, 2 of you can get off at Strat. So the opportunity is there to do that if you want it, but the real benefit is getting from point A to B in a quicker manner. And as we've discussed, you know, the vehicles that are proposed for this tunnel are Teslas. They're Tesla Models X and Y. As we all know, they're all electric, something that's very important as it relates to a tunnel transportation system because there's no emissions. You have emissions in a tunnel from regular gas-powered vehicles. You have a host of other things you have to deal with. If it's an electric vehicle, you don't have those emission elements. So again, it's a battery-powered, zero-emissions vehicle. I have a few slides here to show you some pictures. I believe many of you have had an opportunity to just get a first-hand experience of the Las Vegas Convention Center loop. Many of my team worked with the Boring Company to tour that facility to better understand the design related to it. But these pictures here that I'm going to show you are a couple of the major elements of that system. And the big difference between that system and what we're proposing here today is that system was publicly funded. The LVCVA put out an RFP to actually pay someone to build that system. The system being proposed today is completely different. We're not asking for it. They are asking, can we build it in your right-of-way? Whereas LVCVA paid $52.5 million for this system. The elements that I want you to see is, this first slide is an underground station. The likelihood that many more of these underground stations are going to be built along the rest of the Vegas Loop, Airport Strip downtown, I believe is relatively low because a full underground station is extremely costly. You have to have escalators, you have to have elevators. You have large areas that have to be held back, retaining for that huge area you see here. But needlessly, this is a station that's been built. It could be duplicated, but I wanted you to see what an underground station looks like. And every station would be sized to accommodate the projected ridership. So if you have a station that's servicing thousands and thousands of conventioneers, it's not surprising that this station is quite large. And stations that may service a smaller destination may not need to be nearly as big. But again, this is probably the biggest underground station that you would see on a system like this. The next picture is reflective of the type of station that's probably going to be more common in a large part of the project that would be proposed for the Airport Strip downtown connection. And this is what's called a surface station. And what you'll see on the left-hand side of the picture, where you can see that Tesla car, they're coming out of the ground, they're coming out of the tunnel where they reach the surface of the parking lot. And then once they reach the surface, they pull into a station lot where passengers can get on and get off. And then you'll see the vehicle as it travels around that station, it drops back into the tunnel and gets back into the underground central artery tunnel.
Can you point to that, please?
Yeah, sure,
Can
ma'am.
you
Let me
point to
point
what
that
you're
for you.
saying? I'm confused.
So here's the Tesla vehicle that is coming out of, right back here, you can see the tunnel wall. The vehicle comes out of the ground, the vehicle gets to this point, and here it's at surface. And as it comes out of the surface, it can pull into a space here, or here for passengers to get on and off. Then it hops right back into that lane, loops around the station, and then you'll see right here, there's another wall. That's the vehicle dropping down back into the tunnel. So it's basically, you come out, you do your passenger pickup and drop off, you loop around and drop back down into the tunnel. And so this is a surface station, much, much less costly for the Boring Company or for a private developer to build a surface station. So I believe a hybrid of this type of a design is what will be most common for many of the stations that would be built along this route. Again, this is for the LVCVA, very, very high number of conventioneers getting on and off. So this is a large surface station. Many of the other stations might be half the size, if not smaller. I have an example that I'm going to show you conceptually how one might fit at a location downtown, just so you can understand the size of the stations that we're talking about. This next slide is kind of an overall picture on some of the safety elements of the system. There's been some questions on how does it work, what are some of the features of it to address a variety of safety elements. Anytime you buy a car, some people, when you buy a car, you look to see, Has it gotten a certification from NHTSA? NHTSA is the federal agency, highway safety and transportation. They do tests for all cars to see how it handles a crash, for airbags, how it handles braking ability, whole host of safety elements. If you're generally wanting to have a safer vehicle, you want to have that vehicle get up into the 4- and 5-star range. If you see a vehicle you're looking at on a dealer's lot and it's 1 or 2 stars, you might question getting that vehicle. The vehicles that they've chosen for this, the Model X and Y, from a NHTSA standpoint, that's not a city or state agency, that's a federal agency. They've given that a 5-star rating, the highest rating you can get, so it's well equipped for a safe vehicle if in the event that there's a crash, a head-on crash, a rear-end crash, things of that nature.
You strike no
The
fear in
system
me.
will have what's known as real-time gas and smoke detection. You might say, well, the vehicles don't have emissions, and so what is that gas and smoke? Well, that's in the event that there is a fire or any type of combustion that may occur in that tunnel. There's a system that will real-time sense it and will alert the system for communications that, hey, we have a problem. So think of it like a smoke alarm that goes off, or another feature related to our buildings. This is a feature specific to a tunnel to detect any type of gas or smoke so that an emergency response can be done to address that. The ventilation system, one of the most important aspects of a tunnel is the ventilation system. And we've talked all the time about, some of the tunnels that have been out there since the 1900s, the New York City subways. Well, tunnel design and the features that are used to make them safe has advanced so much in the last 100+ years. This particular ventilation system is going to have to meet what's known as National Fire Protection Association standards, NFPA. Those are standards that are updated, amended year to year based on every project that's built in the country, so that when a new project is built, it's being built to the latest and greatest standards to make it as good as can be. There's also communications between the driver of the vehicle, between the passenger vehicle, and what's known as the control center. And there's 3 ways that they can be communicated to. There's intercoms in the tunnel, there's cell service to the vehicles, and then there's also Wi-Fi. So what you're going to find as I go through some of these slides, that for most of the critical systems, there is a backup system that's in place. In case one goes down, there's another that can be used to maintain that particular element of the tunnel operation. Emergency communications, regularly scheduled practice drills with police and fire departments. That's been a really important part of the LVCVA facility. From the beginning, when we first had our first conversation, I remember sitting down with Chief Buchanan, Chief Nolan, and we said, look, let's start getting a monthly meeting with the county, because where's the LVCVA? It's in the county, it's not in the city. Let's start having this conversation. And the conversation led to monthly, bi-monthly meetings talking about the system. It led to opportunities when County Fire was doing some practice drills in that tunnel, because this is a response that is not common in Southern Nevada. We don't have other tunnels. So there was a lot of learning that was incorporated into learning from a project, which was the LVCVA, and that's going to be carried forward in this project. The emergency communications, regularly scheduled practice drills with police and fire for those events that could happen in this tunnel. A lot of questions I heard related to the driveway surface. The driveway surface is about 12 feet wide. It's a 12-foot inside diameter. A Tesla vehicle is a little over 6 feet wide. So if you do the math, there's somewhere around 5 to 6 feet availability if the mirrors are closed in for, in the event of emergency, that vehicle can pull off to the side. You've got still a sizable area for getting out of the vehicle and be able to walk. But where there is no vehicle, the drive surface is flat, it's flush. It's not like a subway line where you've got an exposed third rail that you don't want to touch. There's not rails that are hindering your ability to walk. It's a flat driveway surface, and so it's a wide walkway for that emergency egress that may have to occur. And again, there's no rail that is what we call a touch hazard that many other types of transportation systems have. This last item is a unique one. When we had some of the terrors of 9/11 and other events, the Homeland Security Division of the federal government was established, and for any type of transportation facility, they're most busy at airports, but there's a requirement for this system to achieve what's known as a Homeland Security review for the system from a safety and security standpoint. It's a pretty rigorous review by Homeland Security. They're not looking at it from the city's perspective or the county or states. They're looking at it from the federal perspective. If there was some type of event, a terrorist event, how would this system address those issues? And so these particular reviews that the Boring Company had, they got what was called a gold standard level review from Homeland Security. That's a good review. That means that Homeland Security feels confident that the system as designed, specifically from a Homeland Security perspective, is solid. I prepared these slides a couple of weeks ago. If you recall, during briefing, I handed them out. But this next grouping of slides has been the foundation of our discussions with the Boring Company from day one, 16, 17, 18 months ago. And that is that for the city of Las Vegas, and it's the same for Clark County, from the beginning, our number one priority for building a tunnel system in the city has been fire and life safety. Because it's so unique, because we have history in Southern Nevada of the MGM fire and how that changed all of our codes, and that we absolutely would not want a tunnel system like this to have the inability to properly cover our tourists, our residents, whoever would use this system from a fire and life safety perspective. And so what you will see, these next couple of slides, these are excerpts right out of the agreement. These are word for word out of the agreement that the Boring Company is being held to as it relates to fire and life safety. The first one is section 3.2, and what you'll see here is all the provisions of the Las Vegas Municipal Code, the applicable National Fire Protection Association, known as NFPA, fire and life safety standards. This next part I'm highlighting, as determined by Las Vegas Fire and Rescue and the city's building department. That's a key, because it's not going to be a situation where the Boring Company says, this is the provision that is appropriate here. No, we had quite a bit of debate that it will be up to our fire department and our building department to make that decision. And it could be a decision that requires a more costly feature, but regardless of whatever it is, we get to make that decision. And the Boring Company fully agreed to giving that latitude to our fire department, our building department, because fire and life safety is our number one priority. And again, all the provisions of the agreement, they're binding upon the company, any successors or assigns they may have over that 50-year period. Section 5.5 is a broader section that addresses a lot of standards that have come up. I want to read you this one. The monorail shall be designed and constructed in accordance with all applicable federal, state, and local laws, rules, and regulations, including one that I had a number of questions on was the Americans with Disabilities Act. There is no getting around ADA connections in this entire facility. That's a requirement of this agreement, and that's all building, electrical, fire, and safety codes as well. So it's a very big section, but it captures a host of items that this project will not see the light of day construction unless all those items are met. The next one, section 6.4, and again, I've captured a couple of key elements in the agreement, specific as it relates to fire and life safety. This is the one that's tied to that Homeland Security review, and it's specifically known as critical infrastructure vulnerability assessments. Is there a vulnerable element in this system that has to be improved so that it doesn't become some type of a target, some type of an issue for our tourists, for our riders? This particular one captures that. It's tied to the National Infrastructure Protection Plan issued by the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency of DHS, Department of Homeland Security. And the capture language that we have here is the company shall coordinate with Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, City Building Department, and DHS on a regular basis. So this isn't one of those evaluations that you do today and you put it in a drawer, that's it. No, this is a regular basis where there may be a newer feature or newer treatment that will ensure that this facility is safe. This section captures that on a regular basis pertaining to the results of the initial and future vulnerability assessments. This last portion of this agreement I think is so powerful, so important for us. There's not going to be any building department permits issued until Las Vegas Fire and Rescue and our building department have approved in writing that it is satisfied with the company's public safety and security plans. Extremely important step, but again, reiterating our fire and life safety focus. And I have one more to protect our taxpayers If our fire and life safety team has to go to an emergency, someone has a heart attack in the tunnel, there is a crash in the tunnel, a fire, you name it, this is a new type of response that we're not currently, may not have the equipment needed, the special breathing devices, special equipment to get in there. So to ensure that that cost for that equipment is not passed on to the taxpayer, this section was specifically asked, and the boring company was completely willing to incorporate this into the agreement. Let me read it to you. Las Vegas Fire and Rescue shall develop a list of equipment that the company will purchase to cover Las Vegas Fire and Rescue's public safety costs in connection to the monorail. Prior to the issuance of the first construction permit, the company shall also pay the city an amount to be determined by the parties and shall make subsequent payments thereafter as agreed upon by the parties, which may include both equipment costs, operating costs, as determined by the parties. And one more time, we reiterated it, no permit shall be issued until Las Vegas Fire and Rescue is satisfied in its reasonable discretion with the equipment list, associated operating costs, and payment phasing. And again, what's so important here is this is a 50-year agreement. The equipment, the technology that may be available today to use in a fire response in a tunnel, it may change in 20 years. And so rather than having those costs passed on to the taxpayer, this particular paragraph ensures that as the tunnel engineering develops as it relates to fire and life safety, we're covered, and the boring company was willing to agree to this provision. The next slide really is a focus on what I've talked about in many of our briefings is, I heard from many of our council that, our section is different from the section south of Sahara. South of Sahara, there's a large casino every couple of 100 feet. When you look at our map, you have the Strat connection, and you have a big gap until you get into downtown. You have one by the plaza, by Fremont Street, but a big gap in the area. And so what we talked about in many of our briefings was how can we develop some additional revenue with this program to help us address some of our civic stations. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. When you look at our downtown area and you look at all the great civic destinations that we have so many of them, but not one of them could be asked to say, well, why don't you fund the station? So up and down the South Strip, hotel casinos are saying, I'm happy to fund the civic station. Some of our major casinos downtown are as well. But when you look at our civic destinations downtown, Smith Center, Children's Museum, the Ma Museum, the Neon Museum, the Natural History Museum, and then additional museums we're actively working with you on, including the Atomic Testing Museum, the African American Museum, the Evel Knievel Museum. All of these destinations are great destinations for tourists that are visiting downtown, but none of them can afford the cost of a station. So our strategy with this agreement that we've brought to you today was, how can we get the boring company to see value in having additional stations that might service some of these civic areas downtown? And we did that by creating a 3-tier civic station revenue funding model, different from the counties, which was two-tier. And I'll walk you through what that looks like. Again, it provides a mechanism to generate additional funding, and the key word here is that could be used to fund civic stations in support of our downtown districts and any other tunnel extension civic station the city might desire. When I talked with some of you about this system, looking at it over a global 50-year period, there could be extensions that go other directions throughout the city. So we didn't want to have this language be limited to one item or the other. We left it broad enough to where if the city desired to have some type of a station added, there's a mechanism in this agreement to do that. What you see here on the right, I asked the boring company to give me an example so I can just conceptualize what a station might look like, so I could also see how much room it would take to put one in. This particular concept you see here is where we have Boulder Plaza in Ward 3, right off of Main Street. And what you'll see here is the Boulder Plaza still is remained intact. But what you have on the left here is the tunnel is coming out of Main Street, and the vehicle comes up. It daylights right near First and Boulder. It can drop passengers on and off, can come around, and then could drop back down into the tunnel in Main Street. So the idea behind this was solely to conceptualize what might a civic station look like from a footprint? Because as you know, downtown, we don't have a lot of large parcels available. We have a lot of small parcels. And so I wanted to understand how tight could they make a civic station if we wanted one. This is the example they gave us. We've made no decisions whatsoever on where a civic station would be. Again, this was just to conceptualize what something like this might look like. And in this particular case, a lot of the feedback that I heard since the project was announced is with our tremendously successful arts district, a station down there seemed like it would be a no-brainer to have a civic station that could service all those small businesses, none of which could fund the station on their own. So again, I wanted you to see this first portion of that three-tier civic station model. Here's a little more details on that civic station model. The three-tier revenue funding model, it has the potential to generate an additional $1.35 million per year over the county's two-tier revenue funding model for the same exact revenue. So as an example, if the project generated $17.5 million in revenue in a quarter, in the county, that $17.5 million would not generate as much as our model. We would generate an additional $1.35 million. If you look at it over a 10-year period, it would generate up to $13.5 million. So conceptually, this all is dependent on the ridership and whether the system attracts the ridership as could be possible. But if it did, there's the potential in this language to generate some additional revenue. That was kind of the feedback that I heard from council was, how are we going to fund the civic station if we wanted one? They could cost anywhere from $1 to $2 million a piece. So with these numbers, you'll see we could fund a couple of them if we wanted. The agreement also allows the city or the boring company the opportunity to convert the three-tier civic station model to the standard county two-tier after the 10th anniversary of the agreement for any reason whatsoever. So there's a way that if we don't like that model, we can go to the county one. But addressing the feedback that I heard, some of our civic destinations downtown, this was something that we really worked hard to try to bring to you, to just have an option, so if desired. These next couple of slides, I'm going to pass the mic on to John Rodilla to walk you through some of the indemnification, liability, and insurance elements. And with
No way.
John. Very comprehensive. Thank you, Mr. Janssen.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Is the microphone's on? Hi, John Rodilla, Deputy City Attorney. Thanks, Mike, for the lead in here. Mike did a great job of working with fire and rescue and the building department to mitigate the risks on a project. But, you know, as we all know, issues happen, and he's asked the City Attorney's Office to make sure that the city is protected. And reducing risk for the city, you know, is a big priority for City Attorney Brian Scott and for the City Attorney's Office. So we want to be sure that not only are we, you know, practically protected through good building permit reviews and fire department approvals, but from the legal perspective. So I just want to go through some slides that are related to legal liability and risk. Perhaps the most important part is getting a good, strong indemnification clause.
Then do it!
This particular clause is probably about as broad as you can get, where the company is required to indemnify, hold harmless, and defend, importantly defend the city. As we know, litigation costs and the defense can be quite expensive. Mike, how do you get that, that thing on?
That's the...
Oh, there you go. Okay. So we have the obligation to defend the city should there be any claims. And it's broad in the sense that it's related to the design, installation, construction, operations, maintenance, or even just the condition of the monorail, including the commissioning, decommissioning, or abandonment, including any action or inaction by the company. And it's not only related just to the monorail, but it's the use of the rights-of-way. So if there's an issue that the city's brought into litigation related to damage done in the right-of-way to a third-party user, like a utility company, for example, if a utility line was damaged and the utility company has a franchise with the city and they attempt to, you know, hold the city responsible, the company is responsible for indemnifying and defending the city in that context.
Very nice.
So not only do we have the indemnification clause, but we also require liability insurance, commercial general liability insurance to protect both the city and the users of the system of limits no less than $1 million combined single limit per occurrence. This amount is consistent with encroachment agreements that the city provides to users of the right-of-way, to people constructing things in the right-of-way, different the utility companies who have agreements with the city, for developers putting off-site improvements agreements, off-site improvements as part of subdivision projects. So those insurance limits are consistent with, generally consistent with other users of the right-of-way. So in addition to the indemnification and insurance, we looked at issues such that, well, say the system just doesn't get finished, or it's built and there's a delay in the construction, or it's abandoned. We don't want to be stuck with a project that is partially complete.
Of course.
Indemnification insurance, we worked with Mike in the company to develop a decommissioning plan. So these are the scenarios where we have to give the company some cure period. So in other words, if they do not successfully complete the construction, they've stopped the construction for a period of 180 days, or they fail to operate for a continuous period of 180 days. The city will provide a cure period of 60 days, and eventually the company would have an opportunity to be heard, or its lender, in front of the city council to consider revocation of the agreement. And if the agreement at some point is revoked, or they fail to complete the system, or they partially complete it, the boring company is going to provide a $350,000 security, either in a bond, cash deposit, or a irrevocable letter of credit, which is the same mechanisms we use for other users of the right-of-way, to secure abandonment of the project, which would include plugging all of the access points to the tunnel, which would prevent the water infiltration, people going into the tunnel and causing issues, and that would secure the right-of-way should the project be abandoned, or even at the end of the term, which is the 50-year term of the agreement. So I'll pass it back over to Mike for some closing comments.
Thanks, John. Mayor and Council, I just wanted to leave you with, I know you're going to open up the public hearing, and just wanted to give you some additional considerations, some of which we talked about in briefings at different stages of our conversation on this project. But as I look at the project, I look at, what's in it for us? What's the benefit for downtown Las Vegas, for the city of Las Vegas? And the first one is one that we run into every day with every project that comes before you. A development project generates traffic. And when a project generates traffic, it has to be mitigated, whether that mitigation is with adding a traffic signal, adding an additional travel lane, adding a bus turnout. You've seen all those types of improvements that we've brought to you when a developer comes in asking to build something. This particular project, the way I look at it is every vehicle that this Vegas loop can remove from our city surface street, those tourists, those visitors, those workers that are using our streets to get from a destination downtown, every vehicle that they can take from the surface and drop into this tunnel, that is going to ultimately free up traffic capacity. And that's traffic capacity that can be used to continue to support downtown redevelopment and just getting the highest and best use of all of our property downtown, something that your entire city team works so hard on, trying to see our downtown developed. And when a developer is hit with a large traffic mitigation measure, that's a cost that has to be added to the project. So a project like this just gives us a side benefit of every vehicle that it can get off, that's one less vehicle that I may have to deal with. On our Las Vegas Boulevard project, at a number of the big intersections, I'm spending quite a bit of money adding additional lanes, additional what we call right turn lanes, because there's so much traffic at Charleston, there's so much traffic at Stewart Avenue. And so it's costly to widen a road. Again, this is a side benefit of this project is some vehicles will be taken off the surface and put into that tunnel. Connectivity, I think, is the next biggest thing for me, to and from those key destinations throughout the resort corridor. Southern Nevada as a whole, we succeed because we're so good working together. And whether our hotel stayers who are at the Circa want to go catch a game at Allegiant Stadium, want to catch a Golden Knights game at T-Mobile, it's great because we're all connected. And a system like this, it really just adds another level of connectivity to and from key destinations from an express connection standpoint. It narrows the distance between MGM to Fremont from a true 12, 13-mile drive where you have to go through 35 traffic signals along the Las Vegas Boulevard corridor to one that is narrowed because now you don't have to stop at any signals. So that connectivity to key destinations is greatly enhanced, and it almost connects the downtown area to the rest of the resort corridor more closely just because that distance is reduced. An additional form of transportation to and from downtown is created with no public funding. That is the most strange thing, if you will, about this project. Rarely does a developer come to us and ask to do something without some type of public allocation. And so, you look at the transit system, there's a lot of federal subsidy that is used towards that. This particular project, no public funding to get another form to service downtown. And then my last item for you all is, I just think it would be unfortunate if the Vegas Loop rider gets on at the MGM and gets in that vehicle and tells her driver, take me to Fremont Street, and the response is, we stop at Sahara. To me, that would be a really unfortunate thing for our downtown. And I know those are the types of things that you're going to hear from some of the downtown property owners as you move into the public hearing. So with that, Mayor and Council, I'd either be happy to answer any questions you have or allow you to take care of the public hearing, and I'll come back and answer any questions you might have.
Okay, well, I think your report was terrific. I know we all have questions, and I think the report was comprehensive. The enthusiasm from downtown and from the private property owners that have been contacting us all is absolutely exactly what you said. I think what I'd like to do is probably sort of reverse it a little bit, because I think our questions and comments may reflect, but we definitely will hear from the public. So I don't want you to have to stand up. I wish we had a stool. Oh, we do have a chair over there, but so that you can answer the questions and comments as you go forward. But I want to disclose right up front, I've been 11 years on the LVCVA board, so I've been party to this whole concept from its inception. I also sit on the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and so discussion with different mayors about why they haven't gone ahead with something similar or specifically here at this time. We are the leaders on this. And so I wanted to make that a statement, but very definitely the enthusiasm, and I think the things that you have brought up right up front has really made this a wonderful time for us, because it has gotten the concentration and conversation going about traffic, and whether you sit on the RTC as Mayor Pro Tem and I do, which is the Regional Transportation Commission, we are dealing with so many of the issues you've brought up. So the first thing was, of course, this support downtown marketing. People, there's a whole different time of life, and what people used to do 15, 20 years ago has totally changed, and young people and older people want to come down where the action is, shoulder to shoulder, different brewery to the next brewery. So we're dealing with a different time, that is it. But it is to connect. It's been the piece with the monorail that included the airport has become important, but not as important as it was then. What is more important is moving people in southern Nevada around. We get, and correct me on any data, but from my knowledge, 20 million people of the 40 million visitors come downtown. And Mr. Cervantes, please, also chime in. And so the connectivity piece is extremely important to those who have art galleries, restaurants, hotels in the downtown, to bring that force of people who want to come down here. And we are doing everything we can to be old Vegas. We are the core of the history by providing free service. We have a free loop, the downtown loop, which, as you know, connects and runs downtown. Hopefully, as the demand is beginning to increase remarkably, we're adding more and more. But I think it is looking at new modes of transportation. And so we need to be stepping forward in this dialogue and doing something, be it this or something else.
Then do it!
The underground focus is incredible. And it is something we've not touched before. And as Mike suggested, him coming also from the New York boroughs, as do I, or did I, the years on the subways where there were multiple channels in riding the subways. So as we look to questions, and, you know, I don't know whether you answer them at this point, but that person up at the MGM who wants to come down to Circa, on an express lane, if there's only one tunnel in each direction, where's that express? Because there are going to be other cars in the lane, just numbers we're talking. The numbers of people that ride the vehicles in the subways of New York are
Pretty big.
many. We have 160,000 people coming into CES. At this point in this proposal, one vehicle, one driver, 3 passengers. And to move them, and these are just questions that need to be worked through, which is all part of the process. Very aware. But this council and its predecessor council, the first thing you talked about was safety. And over 60% of our budget is directed to safety issues. So when you talk about, and you have called this agreement monorail.
Quit wasting my time.
Fixed. I don't know why we chose rail, because this is not rail. This is individual drivers and not on a fixed route, but in a fixed tunnel. And for the initial stage of 34 miles with 55 stations, one tunnel each way with feeders.
Right, okay.
So I wonder, those are just some of the thoughts. The multi-track in London, in New York, in Denver, and whether it's a tram like we ride at the airport, where you may have 20, 30 people in a tram or a car. How do we move these big numbers? And that the ownership and only use of Teslas, how are we taking vehicles away that we drive up on the surface when underground it's just the Tesla? It's not us going underground.
No, no, no
Issues of
way.
Safety and health, and you've addressed that. If in fact our grid fails, we are in the Southwest, the hottest part of the country. California suffers grid failure with rapidity, and hopefully we don't, we may, but how do we handle the tunnel going dark, the air circulation, how do we handle that, aside from having generators? And then the drivers, we cannot find drivers for trucks moving supplies from the oceans in the Far East into the country. How do we sustain the drivership and human error with these types of vehicles? The biggest thing is that we are the first. So there is no data. There's no data on this.
This is totally false.
Multi-tunnel processing of this type of project. So the question is, how does one make an evaluation? I was reading something by Elon Musk the other day as he is purchasing Twitter, and he was specifically asking, where is your backup? Where's your data from other entities here? And since we have no model, these are just some of the questions. You mentioned ADA. We have no disability. These are questions that have come in to us.
No.
Wondering as we continue to grow, how do you handle, how long will it take for a tunnel to come down and then be able to have an express lane tunnel built so you can actually appreciate the ride from MGM to the downtown in enough numbers to satisfy the foot traffic that we want to be here. So I know, and I've heard from everybody that may want to ask questions, I know that we had talked about, and I had shared with one of the attorneys representing Loring. There's so many questions, and we cannot meet 4 together. And it's very important. This is the public time that we get to talk. and what one member of the council may have to offer as a comment may sway the entire conversation another way. So I think what you
All
have presented
right.
to protect the city, protect the taxpayer, address safety and health issues has been very comprehensively addressed here. The enthusiasm to be part of it is without question there. We know that. But to answer these questions and others that may come up, it seems you have all the stopgaps there, but where will this start? Where will the beginning of the building be? And when will it begin to at a reasonable time length?
Mayor, if I could address just a few of your questions, and then I think what I'll do is I'll ask the president of the Boring Company, Steve Davis, to come up. He can address some of the more detailed questions on timing and where the routes would begin. But the first question you asked was, why are we doing this agreement as a monorail? And I think when you just read monorail as on the surface, you think, okay, there needs to be a rail. But when you go to state law, a monorail is defined as a transportation system that has a fixed guideway. There's no requirement for it to have a rail. So it just happens to be how it's defined in state law. And so when the Boring Company came to us, we looked legally to find out, how does such a facility get permitted? How does such a facility get approved to move forward? And that definition in state law was, it's a monorail, it's a fixed guideway. The tunnel is the fixed guideway because it's fixed. Secondly, we talked about, what is the capacity of a single or dual lane tunnel. If you look at most of our roadway network in southern Nevada, look back at the Beltway. The Beltway was originally built with one lane each direction. If you remember, it was just an interim facility. A few years later, as the growth came in, a second lane was added. And ultimately today, there's 8 lanes on the Beltway. The right-of-way that we have under Las Vegas Boulevard and along Main Street is an 80 to 100-foot right-of-way. The right-of-way south of Sahara is 100 to 150-foot right-of-way. So from the Boring Company's perspective, the tunnel boring machines have the capacity, if the single-lane tunnel fills up, there is the ability to add another tunnel. And so just like any other roadway, just like any other highway, you can add additional capacity by adding additional tunnels. And that's what the president of the Boring Company told me is, if the system is successful enough to where it warrants a second tunnel, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to work on putting that second tunnel so that it could achieve the express flow characteristics that would be desired for the rider. If you think back to something like the California 91 express lanes going to the beach cities, they've got express lanes there. They've been widened because the demand for those express lanes got so big that additional lanes have been added. So in many ways, the capacity of the system is really going to be expanded when needed by the addition of an additional tunnel. What they're looking to build initially, based on their preliminary numbers, is the 2-lane tunnel on the Las Vegas Boulevard south of Sahara with the single-lane loop coming into downtown. But I know from discussions with Mr. Davis, the ability to add additional tunnels is completely there. And the beauty, I think, for us from the surface level is the construction activity can occur underground without disrupting the surface. And so
It's time
many
to
of the
kick
projects that
ass
I've
and
brought
chew
to you
bubble
over the
gum.
years were a new
And
type
I'm
of
all
sewer
out of
rehab.
gum.
It's where we reline the sewers. Back in the old days, we had to cut a trench, pull that old sewer out, and put a new one in. It was extremely disruptive to the public. But when we came up with that new treatment, sometimes called micro-tunneling or microsurfacing, it takes away all that disruption at the surface level. What they're proposing here is really just taking that concept to the next level and applying it under a tunnel standpoint. And so just wanted to address the capacity question and the definition of monorail. As it relates to the grid system, as I mentioned earlier, because of the criticality of a transportation system underground, the Department of Homeland Security questioned, how are you going to deal with things like a power outage? And for that reason, the system as designed will have, of course, the power feed from Nevada Energy, but it has those additional backup diesel generators, battery generators, and that's how you do it. At our sewer treatment plant, east side of town, we have multiple backup systems for the same reason. It's a critical piece of infrastructure, and so for this particular project, there's no way it'll rely on just one source of power. It might actually have a power feed from one substation, a power feed from another substation, and then those other backups. This building that we're in today, if our power goes out, we have a diesel generator in the basement that kicks on and turns on the power. So having a way to deal with power outages is actually very common for any type of a large building or facility, and that's how they would address that particular question.
And in the Southwest, particularly with our extraordinary heat and everything else, and watching California.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's turn to questions, comments, because I can assure you the enthusiasm is down here, and anybody just hopes they can do it overnight and make it available. Yes,
Question.
please.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I have to thank our staff, especially you, Mike, Jorge, and especially my colleagues, Councilwoman Seaman and Councilman Knutson, over the months of going through briefings and hearing my banter back and forth, and I want to thank you all for that. And I have been back and forth on this project. There's a lot of pros, there are some challenges engaged in this. I'll start by saying also that I love the technology. Right? When I first saw the technology and went out to visit, I came back and told you that I thought it was amazing, and I could see it being throughout the valley as a mode of transportation. And then, but I haven't been a fan of the deal itself. That's no secret. I think that it's, somewhat one-sided in terms of the upside for the city and where it potentially may go. We are definitely rolling the dice on this, and if it's successful, then we'll reap the benefits of it. If it's not, then we say that there's no cost to the city. I mean, there's always ancillary costs. There's cost of, even if it's underground real estate, even if it's just infrastructure, even if it's just intelligence that went into the future of this, because as the mayor said, we are sort of the beta test for this. So I'm not as solid on the what if of what if all hell breaks loose. And I know you talked about the decommissioning and a little bit about what that entails. It doesn't seem like $350,000 is close to being enough. I don't know how you came up with that number in terms of, because if you're talking about building tunnels and ramps, et cetera, throughout the city, I don't know if this is just based off of this particular downtown model, and as we add, if it's going to end up coming in the city from Summerlin into whatever, I mean, there could be potentially hundreds of tunnels. And if one day over the next 50 years or course of time, things change, ridership changes, Boring decides to walk away from the deal or what have you, and we have $350,000 remediation costs to fill the tunnels.
No way.
To be appropriate.
Councilman, to your point, that 350 is to put seals on all the access points that have been proposed for the initial construction. Every station that comes before you that are seeking a special use permit, that will be an opportunity where an additional condition of approval can be placed on that special use permit. The way the overall SUP was issued is the basic central artery tunnel, just the main feeder tunnel, has certain access points, and that 350 pays for seals to seal off the access points on that central artery tunnel. And as the system may grow to add a station and it opens up a new access point, that special use permit specific to that station will undoubtedly have a condition that says you'll need to pay an additional fee for that additional seal, because we only could count the seals for the access points that are in the initial proposal that's before you. So there will be a mechanism. That 350 is the start, and as those additional access points or tunnel extensions may occur over the life, each time staff will ensure that we have a condition of approval that an additional seal, whether it's one seal, two seals, or three, but we priced out the seal similar to what we use on our big storm drain projects when we have to seal off a manhole. It's a piece of concrete with rebar, it's tied into the tunnel, and it seals off that access point. Once the tunnel's in, you can't, there's no taking it out, but you can seal it off so that does not become a attractive nuisance.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
Okay. And the term of the deal seems long, especially, we are really rolling the dice. I mean, we're going into this sort of, as the mayor says, sort of as a beta test of this, and it's, I think we need to go into it with our eyes wide open with that. I'm for the technology. The downtown community is overwhelmingly in support of this project, which I view them as our trusted partner as we grow the city, as we grow our downtown and tourism, and as we add to the 21 million visitors that come downtown, and how do we, tie into that. I don't necessarily, there is a consensus that if we don't do it now, then it may or may not come. I'm not totally sold on that, but it's been said by a number of smart people and people who are well thought out that really believe that. So I have to take some validity into that, even if I don't quite see it that way. I think it's important that we are forward thinking. We have to be prepared for the future, and this is one way to do it. So I'm very interested in hearing my colleagues, hearing the discussion in a public setting like this, and we'll see where we go from there. Thank you.
And this does not preclude your ability to come back in, because I would like to give the opportunity, I think, what the council feels at this point or wants to make the statement, then to the public, because then you will not reiterate everything that we're saying, or by saying, yes, I agreed with that comment from Councilwoman Seaman or whatever. So again, we thank you. I mean, your work's been tremendous. So anybody wanting to make that, I mean, there'll be plenty of other opportunity if you want to wait and just hear from public, or you would like to comment at this point.
Stop whining.
Okay, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I've been pretty engaged in this process from the very beginning. I remember the initial tour. I think it's, I tie everything back to the presentation that we got earlier today around housing. And that's the most common issue that comes up for me is housing. And if we start going denser, we have got to change the way we move people around, because in the medical district alone, there's going to be at least 2, potentially 5 apartment complexes that are going to come in the next year, year and a half. Any one of those apartment complexes is not going to have the parking requirements that we need at the city. We are going to have to think about how differently we can engage moving people to and from places. So the Boring Company and what they represent, I think, provides an innovative solution to a very real challenge that we have in our community.
I like
in the beginning, I think I asked a whole bunch of really stupid questions because I don't understand how you dig tunnels. I don't get that at all. But I think it's really cool. What I do hear in my constituents is a demand for greater access to transportation options. And so in every single meeting that I have with the neighborhoods around the medical district in particular, Area 15, when that was in my district, I brought it up all of the time, talking about how we're going to move people to and from, with the eventual hope of getting as many people into the downtown core as we possibly can, because that's ultimately what our lifeblood is. I remember when this item, the map, came before City Council 2 years ago. Councilwoman Seaman and I were talking about, it'd be great to be able to grab a dinner in the Arts District and then take the tunnel and a Tesla up to go see a baseball game in Ward 2 and the county. And ultimately, that's our competition, is the county. The downtown Summerlin is our competition for downtown Las Vegas. We have got to be able to compete with them. And competition is good for our entire community. So to a person, every person that I talk to in my ward is incredibly excited about the opportunity for Boring Tunnel and the public transit stations, particularly in the medical district. But I hope it expands, because I see that as another way of moving people in a different way that's better for our environment. It takes cars off of the roads. And I think it's a healthy, innovative, creative strategy of moving people around.
Yeah.
I also, just to be clear, Mr. Janssen, I trust you. I asked a whole bunch of questions, and you're super smart, and I really do trust the fact that you put so much energy and time into this. And you've done a really good job of coming up with solid recommendations, and it wasn't like an easy thing in the first briefing. There was lots of complications with this, and you worked through them diligently, just like an engineer would. So I don't understand the engineering side of it, but I trust you, and I think we have really good staff, and the staff, I think, are doing a great job at saying this is what's best for downtown Las Vegas. So I am in full support. I've had lots and lots of time to ask questions over the last year and a half, and all of those questions to a T have been answered, I think, really well by you. So thank you.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Seaman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have been a fan of this technology since I toured the tunnels when they were being built. And I think with the growth of Las Vegas, this is going to be, as Councilman Knudsen said, a game changer. And I think sometimes you have to take a risk to be successful. We need to move with the technology, and it will be cleaner for the environment. And my only question is, how soon are we going to have it in my ward?
Hasta la vista, baby.
Okay, yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think increasingly technology is outpacing us all. Like, I remember the days when I was fresh out of college and I was amongst other colleagues in the teaching space, and I couldn't understand why they couldn't get with the times with a program on the computer to input grades, and they were very used to their grade books and just manually doing that, right? And so the evolution of technology is so fast now. It's at lightning speeds. I can't wrap my head around Halo, the company that's gonna, be driving the car autonomously, and then you get in it, and then you drive it, and then it moves on its own. So these are the times we are living in. We have to be cognizant that they're only going to continue to move faster, and they're going to continue to be different, and we shouldn't be scared of embracing the technology and the advancements that can be beneficial for our city.
I like you.
I love that there will not be any more orange cones because we have plenty of the state flower, because everybody keeps saying, oh my gosh, I can't with the traffic. So I love that we're not going to be impacting that. I love that it doesn't have a carbon footprint. It's electric. We don't have to worry about what is the harm we're doing to our environment. I love that we are adding a layer of safety here for folks who do want to go have a night on the town and are going to have a couple of drinks and don't necessarily don't have to be concerned about themselves moving from point A to B to C to have a good time. And it keeps other people on the roadways also safe because people aren't making the wrong decision to be under the influence or not be 100% and being behind the wheel. And I feel that we get the benefit of all the kinks being worked out because they have been in operation over a year. They've seen over 700,000 riders use it just in the convention center. And then as the other stations are added, we get the benefit of them having to troubleshoot and work out those little kinks before we finally get to enjoy the amazing, well-oiled transit line that will be accessible not only to tourists coming into Las Vegas, that we want to make sure that they come and they experience downtown as well, but also all of us that are part of Las Vegas who also may want to enjoy that commodity and that experience. And the first hurdle I had to clear is learn how to open the Tesla door. Because I didn't even know, how do I get into this car? And so if you've never been in a Tesla, it's one of those things that it's not something that you know, but I'm looking forward to everything that we can do to increase traffic and also make sure that our transit systems are being thoughtful, intentional. We've been hearing from our community, we want rail, we want rail, we want rail, and rail hasn't happened for our community. And I don't know, the cost is exorbitant. I'm not sure that we'll ever make it happen, but we need to be open to alternatives. The loop is they're the ones taking the biggest risk, and I hope that we can, support them and hopefully see that it's going to be a win-win for everyone.
Thank you.
I like you.
Okay, if there are no more comments, let's go with, and then we'll open it up anybody who would like to. But let's start with Gary Cray Jr., if you would, and then Russ Geckner, then Michael Park, and then Stephen Thayer. And then from there, we'll just have it open to the public. And thank you all for caring enough to come down and participate. Yes, sir. And your name, you have to say it again for our record.
Gary Craig, 2118 Edgewood Avenue. Good morning, Council people. I'm here speaking in support of it. Both me and my wife live and work.
Could I ask you to speak closer into the mic? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Both me and my wife both live and own businesses in the downtown area, and we think that this will provide an outlet. Over and over again, we hear from people that have been coming to Vegas 20, 40 years, and they don't even know that downtown exists, let alone they've never even been here. And we think that this will not only allow us to take the lead on, a new technology and a new mode of transportation, it'll bring a lot of attention to the downtown area, not only get people down there physically, but metaphorically with all the and all the media circus that Elon Musk and Tesla seem to bring. I also, though, I think that we need to focus more on the gap between the Sahara and the Fremont Street experience. I mean, a lot of us as a community have been coming together and trying to redevelop that area and bring it up. And it seems like a missed opportunity to just kind of go right by that, especially underground where we don't, no one's even going to get to see the progress that we made. I know he said that we could easily add a station or two in the future, but it seems that we have all the workers now, the lawyers, the engineers, the construction people on staff. It seems that no time is better than the present. And I think we should focus on filling in that gap now rather than later. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think what you're saying too is the marketing. It's so important that we get the continue, and that's what I think we try to do, is get the word out that it's exciting and everything's happening down here, and it's not a mile or a block apart from one place to the next. It's right here, everything's happening. So great comments. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Craig. Morning, I think.
For a short time. Good morning, Russ Gackner, 518 Jenny Place. I just wanted to come by today and voice my comments on this project. Everybody I know is really excited for this project to happen. I think everybody here agrees that it's probably going to happen. But not uncommon for my day to start on the south end of the Strip somewhere, come downtown several times and go back and forth. And to be able to use this transit system instead of having to move my car back and forth is a tremendous help. And so I think this project will help, and I think that be a great thing to end my day at Oscars and move on from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have a drop right there for sure. Thank you. Okay, Michael Park.
All right.
Michael Park, 3187 Mira del Prado. Thank you for the opportunity to come here today to speak in support of this project. And while it's me that's speaking to you, I'm also speaking on behalf of Jonathan Kermani, as well as Adam Falad and his father. Adam was here, but he had to leave before he had a chance to speak. So it's our hope to see this current item approved. We feel that, as well as a large majority of Downtown South stakeholders, that this project will be a boon to the neighborhood by better connecting the tourist population of the Strip and the Convention Center to downtown businesses. Excuse me. More options to better convey customers through the doors of downtown businesses without burdening our limited parking resources. I think that's something that we as a neighborhood feel is a gift and one that should be gladly accepted. So, thank you.
Great. Yep, we have parking problems for sure. Thank you. Thank you. And thank Mr. Kamani, Mr. Falad. Stephen Thayer.
Winner, winner, Sheen dinner.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Appreciate it. Stephen Thayer, I'm the Vice President and General Manager at the Strat Hotel, Casino, and Skypod. So you guys asked a lot of questions that we had when we first heard about this project. So very good questions as you're thinking about the implementation of this. I'm going to stay away from some of those things and try and give more of a business perspective from what we see at the Strat. And another reason why it's so imperative that it be now rather than later, in our opinion. I think if you look at current environment, somebody traveling from south of the Strip coming up north of the Strip to Strat or even further up in downtown, a current transportation mode will take you 30 minutes round trip, depending on how many cones are out there and what the time of day is. So that's an hour of time to get there. So more importantly than the accessibility of this to us is the travel time reduction. You can take that, that's an hour of time out of somebody's visit here. If you can take that and turn it into 20 minutes round trip, that's 40 additional minutes that they have to enjoy our services, enjoy our products, and that in turn turns into value as business owners. And we look at that all the time within our own business of how can we reduce lines, how can we reduce transaction times. That means time on device, that means time to experience it, which again, it has a financial benefit, but also a benefit to the experience that people have when they come see our city. I think transportation is a bottleneck right now, and if we don't do something now, it's going to become more and more of a problem. All day we've been listening to the growth of this city, and that's a great thing. We all want that. And if we don't figure out how to fix the transportation piece quickly, it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue that you guys are going to be hearing about on a regular basis. And to have it have a zero carbon emission solution, to have for the size of this project, to have the construction time in such a short window, in my opinion, are all added benefits. And then obviously reduction of other cars so we can all use our surface streets in an easier manner as we're getting to and from. But one more piece from a current scenario, when we have large events in this city, right now, when those events are happening, I can't get a cab or an Uber to come to our property. So that's happening right now. And as events continue to come back, and we hope they come back larger and with a higher frequency, that will become more and more apparent on a regular basis. So we are in full support. We've signed up to build a station on our property, and thank you for your time.
Good. Thank you. Wonderful.
Winner, Sheen dinner.
Support. And anyone else? Now it's open even if you didn't fill out a card.
Come on, man.
And please be sure to state your name clearly so we can put you on the record.
Good afternoon. I'm Becky Miller. I am at 1235 South Main Street. Most of you know me as the Vice President of the Las Vegas 18B Arts District. Some of you don't know that I'm actually an engineer, and I've had the honor to work on some of our country's most sophisticated aircraft, and I understand risk management, and I understand the difficulty of getting some of our modern technologies up and running. I've been involved with the Boring Company's project here with the Loop since the very conception of it, following along, asking questions, and going to meetings. And I believe these folks can do what they said they're going to do, as well as any other company coming out doing something like this. And they've already got a proof of concept. It's already working. This is going to happen. We have to move people, and we have to move people in a cost-effective and a manner that doesn't impact our environment. I think this is our answer. I hope that the city decides to help the Arts District not be Las Vegas's best-kept secret and continue to move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I like you.
Hello, thank you. My name is Ryan Rowland. I'm here representing the Plaza Hotel and Casino, 1 Main Street.
Wow.
Very grateful to have the opportunity to speak to you today in strong support of the Boring Company's plan to expand its Vegas Loop to and around downtown Las Vegas. Thank you to the leadership of this council, our mayor, and dedicated business owners. Downtown Las Vegas has transformed into a destination offering great art, dining, hospitality, culture, and entertainment. More guests are choosing to stay downtown as a result, which is great news. Yet getting downtown from the Strip remains a challenge. New projects, less access, and parking limitations. More transportation options are needed, particularly to bring convention visitors located on the Strip to downtown Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Loop provides connectivity to key destinations quickly and inexpensively, and it also reduces traffic congestion, which is a growing problem downtown. The proposed expansion of the Vegas Loop supports our efforts to grow downtown and attract more visitors. On behalf of the plaza, we welcome it and look forward to having a stop on the route. Thank you.
Thank you.
Billy Orcutt, 1851 Western, Mayor, Council lady, or ladies and people. I'm here to represent Mountain West Excavation and Utilities. We've been working with the boring company for a little over 2 years. We're a locally owned company, women-owned. We're signatory with the operating engineers and the laborers' unions. We have had benefits with working with them on a weekly basis. Lately, it's become increasing on a day-to-day basis. I am dealing with them every day.
Very nice.
Besides the benefits of having good relationships and keeping the guys steady, they pay their bills. So with that said, we are in strong support of this project.
Thank you.
Jonathan Ullman with the Mob Museum, President and CEO, Mayor, members of City Council. We strongly support the boring initiative. Perfect. Very excited to see the potential for the loop coming downtown. And certainly hope that it will even extend farther north all the way to Stewart Avenue. The Mob Museum sees the majority of our visitors come via single passenger cars, either parking, driving down and parking in our lot, or coming via rideshare, Lyft or Uber. Certainly, it's no secret to all of us the challenge of getting in and around downtown, and whether coming from the airport, the convention center, other properties in the resort corridor, or moving between districts downtown, increasingly challenging. The amount of construction, congestion, lack of available parking during peak hours, all of that can be asphyxiating to our businesses. It's hard to see where there's risk in this, where there's downside to the businesses, to the city. This is something that is being funded privately, and certainly something that is, we should see as being additive. It's not crowding out other modes of transportation. So for us, this is an exciting way in which we can continue to move people down and around downtown. And most importantly, it's happening. It's happening between the airport, the convention center, the various resort properties, and it would be an enormous missed opportunity for us if we are not a part of that. So we need to figure out how to patch into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like you.
Good morning, Brent Conrad, 4660 Flippin Street, Las Vegas, Nevada. President, owner of Wordco BC. We're a trucking company here locally. We haul dirt, sand and gravel, heavy equipment and stuff. Been here since 1977. I believe this is long overdue for Las Vegas, something like this. We've been a partner with the boring company since inception. We actually, I believe we hauled the first boring TBM into town for them, and we've disposed of most of their spots. So been great partners with us, and I believe we should support them all the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Your Honor.
Morning.
Members of the council. My name is Jeff Victor. I work for Derek and Greg Stevens and serve as their Vice President of Operations for their 3 casino properties in the downtown Las Vegas Event Center. We've been working with the boring company since the early construction days of Garage Mahal. Garage Mahal, as you may know, is something we built as a transportation hub. It's a very different design that was created to take advantage of more modern technologies, including rideshare, that hadn't previously existed in designs of garages all through Las Vegas. We've always believed that this technology that we're discussing today would be a great fit for us and other locations downtown, so we're here in support of that.
Winner, winner, Sheen dinner.
I don't know if it's procedurally correct, but the current president of the Fremont Street Experience, Andrew Simon, was not able to be here today, but he did send me with a letter of support.
Sure.
As a former president of the Fremont Street Experience and a current board member for the Fremont Street Experience. I'd like to read that if I could.
Please do.
All
And
right.
that's Andrew Simon,
Yeah.
who's the president of FSC now.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you.
All right.
Dear Mayor Goodman and members of the City Council, Fremont Street Experience wishes to express its support of the Boring Company for the right to install and operate the Vegas Loop underground public transportation system to downtown Las Vegas. We believe it is important to proceed forward in a timely manner to ensure the ability to transport locals and tourists. We would have serious concerns if the project were to move forward through the Las Vegas Valley without a shared access to downtown Las Vegas. We are proud of the continued substantial investment by our member properties and want to ensure we make it as convenient as possible to ensure our great destination. Sincerely, Andrew Simon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hadouken! Good morning.
Morning.
Larry Miller, 151 Casilla Way. I'm with Nevada Ready Mix. Been a local concrete ready mix supplier for Southern Nevada for over 60 years. My responsibilities with the company have been in ACT for 40 years. So on a personal note, I love to see technology like this, and as a longtime resident of Las Vegas, this type of opportunity come to the people that live here. From a professional standpoint, it's obvious that these tunnels would require a great deal of concrete.
Yes.
And we'd be more than happy to supply that. We have been
At
working
which
with
price? Locked in today, I hope?
No.
Oh, that's a matter of record.
We employ 150 union members from the operating engineers, Local 12, and also the Teamsters, Local 631. And the good employees of our company, the men and women that drive the trucks. Unfortunately, there's no electric ready-mix concrete trucks yet, but the good men and women that drive these trucks, that produce the gravel for the ready-mix concrete and such, would be greatly boosted by a project like this, and it would help provide jobs, not only support jobs now that are current, but also in the future as the city and as the town continues to grow. So we're very much in favor of the Boring Company and support of this project.
Thank you. We'll see.
I love you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
George Ross, 2321 Timberline. Madam Mayor, fellow council members, I work for Dapper Companies, and we own about 8 or 9 properties downtown currently and under development as well. Most of them are retail, few are office. We feel that this project would be beneficial not just to the local residents, but also the tourists. It would provide an important alternative for folks to reach downtown from Harry Reid Airport, as well as the resort corridor. This would bring a lot more business to downtown and obviously translate to a lot more tax revenue for the city. As downtown continues to grow and become more dense, this Boring project would definitely alleviate traffic on the streets. We hope that this project would be approved and further stops, including the Arts District, would be added. We're definitely believers in downtown. We're going to continue to invest capital into downtown. I think that this project would be beneficial to the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Damn, I'm good.
Anyone else? Any comments you would like to make, or do you want to make, and before we have a motion here, I mean, I think the enthusiasm and efforts from the community are very clearly in support of moving forward and changing out transportation or adding to it, and just great work by our city. As Councilman Knudsen said, we can always rely on you to be thorough and help us. So,
Madam Mayor, Member of City Council, that's my presentation today. Appreciative of the citizens and business owners that came down today to talk about the project, but I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have and go from there.
I don't even think there is, I mean, I think we've heard from everybody. Everybody's enthused about it, and unless...
Very nice.
I will close the public hearing then, since no one else has come down to speak, and would entertain a motion dependent upon if there's something else.
Mayor Jorge Cervantes, it might be beneficial for Mr. Miller to come up and just talk. The question came about timelines, and I don't think that's been answered, so that would might be beneficial.
Okay. Yeah, where, not only timelines of when things may happen, but where will you start, what is, and then the rapid speed, how many tunnels are you going to do, when, and what can we be looking at, so everybody can get planning going. Thank you, Mr. Cervantes.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
Here on behalf of the Boring Company, with me Steve Davis, the president of the Boring Company. Before we answer that question, if I could just say thank you very much to Mike Janssen, John Radilla, all of your staff. They're phenomenal, and so we appreciate the opportunity to be a partner with the city. We trust him too, and we've been nothing but unbelievably impressed with working with them, and really look forward to a long-term relationship with the city on this project. Steve is probably the best to answer the questions, and I'm sure he'll echo me as well. I know he and Ashley have worked longer with Mike and staff, but where we're at today is phenomenal. It's super exciting. I'm honored to be a part of it, and I appreciate all the support here today as well.
Yeah, and just to echo that as well, Steve Davis, 3395 Cambridge. Wanted to thank all of you and your staff. They've been amazing. Mike was probably the best presentation I've ever seen on the Boring Company. So thank you for that. And then John's
Don't hire him.
And then John's been fantastic as well. And I just did want to thank the Boring Company team for coming. I think they're the ones that are making this happen. And it's good for them to see the vast community support. To answer your question on timelines, I think Mike's presentation showed how early we are. Right, this is step 2, and there's 8 steps for us to be opening. So we're gonna, if this passes, I will guarantee we're in the office tomorrow with drawings. I will guarantee that's how this will go. But there's a long way to go. There's a lot of work to do. So if I had to guess on the spot, I would guess we have machines in next calendar year. But there's a lot of work to be done, and this is a key, hopefully, a key next step.
But if you would share with us, I think it's important for the community to know, will you start, I mean, you obviously have looked, is it better for the company to start at the south end? Where will you be starting? And then between the start, when might downtown be optimistic and being connected to something south?
Absolutely. The most likely place to start is on the south end and then loop up all the way north. It's one large loop, so you can really pick any starting point, but looking at land availability, the southern portion headed north seems to be the correct one. The actually tunneling is the fastest part of this project. So the tunnel itself will be done in a matter of depending on how many machines we throw at it, but in a matter of months, not years. Like definitely under 1 year, probably under 6 months if we get enough machines at it. That's the fastest part of the project. It's all the planning, and then the station construction that actually takes the longest. If you look at the convention center, the tunneling was actually the shortest amount of time. The longest amount of time for the convention center was the construction of Central Station. So we expect, assuming all goes well in planning, for the tunneling to occur very rapidly, and then the stations will take a little bit more time in the end. And to echo everyone who's been here, we are very incentivized and motivated to have as many stations as possible. Obviously, this is for a small initial 5, but there is that large zone with the Arts District and other places that it is critical that we get other stations into. It makes it more valuable, more useful. Yeah, and so again, it's really going to be the tunneling that's the fast part, and then the stations will take a little longer on the back end.
And I
Very
gather
nice.
stations are open-ended as to how opulent they might be. So an estimate for an average station, whatever that might be called, is, I've heard is in the 4 million area is what a hotel, not talking a smaller place, but is that a reasonable estimate for a hotel, smaller hotel?
It depends. So on the low end, if all the planning's done well, meaning that the tunnel is extremely close to where the station's going, and if you want a small, non-opulent surface station, you could do that for about $1.5 million.
Wow.
As it starts becoming more complex or farther away, you start getting into 3, 4, 5, and if you go with a grandiose subsurface, you're probably around 20. But the beautiful part about the system is that, well, one of them is that the stations can be made very small and very inexpensive, so it makes it incredibly inclusive.
Perfect. And I don't know if there might be some question. Anybody, would you want one at your front door? And how about the laterals coming off? I mean, this is, we heard from Councilman Knutson about the medical district. So, I mean, that really a spur off, which we had talked about with the BRT coming down Maryland from the airport, which might have been a rail type thing to have spurs going there. But if you can do that with the loop, is your loop strictly
What the hell does that have to do with anything?
Visitor and tourism and hotel connectivity?
No, the purpose of it is to expand it as much as possible to serve the community. You have to start somewhere, and please remember that between the 6 miles in the city and the 29 in the county, it's the largest subsurface construction project in the country. I believe in the world, but I can't verify that, but I can definitively say the country. So it's a very ambitious place to start, but if the community likes it and you like it, we would love to be back in front of you as soon as possible to expand the land use to more communities. It'd be great.
Well, I think we'd all love to be kept up to speed, which we know we will, certainly by our staff. But how things, when you're breaking ground, what's going to happen? How far is it going to go? How many drivers do you need? You've got 55 cars. Well, if it's operated 24/7, you're going to need an awful lot more than 55 drivers.
Right,
So
okay.
as you look at that, and then for the customer, what is the rate of the customer's cost to ride? Or are you treating all our customers with ridership for free?
No way.
At some point, $1 has to come in.
At least for a
no,
year.
Yeah, no, but to give a sense for at least the fares, a sample fare, and obviously stuff can change over time, but what we've kind of said is Fremont Street to airport for a vehicle should be around $12. And you can put 3 people in a car, so it's around $4 a person. That's where it should be. It's not going to be 30, it's not going to be 1. 12 is kind of where we are. So, and the trip, by the way, from the Fremont to the airport would take about 8 minutes. So you're talking about 8-9 minutes for $12 for a car. It's compelling. That's why I think we have the community support.
And that is assuming multiple tunnels, obviously, because we're all riding other places. If you're going directly to the airport from the plaza, let's say, that's optimum, and that wouldn't be on the 1 or 2 tunnels. You would be building multiple tunnels to
My
get people.
God, what is wrong with
You have
you?
the main artery. So you take the main artery down from Fremont all the way down to Tropicana, and then you have a spur off over to the airport.
Wow.
Yeah, and by the way, Mike kind of talked about how building other tunnels. If we get to that point, that's a wonderful place to be. But just to give, I think you mentioned 20 million visitors a year.
Downtown.
Just to use that number, order of magnitude. That's around. Well, my math is around, if you assume 18 hours, around 3,000 people an hour. If we took all 20 million people, we do more than 3,000 people an hour today at the convention center. So the system as is can manage all of those people without the extra tunnel. And if we're at a point where we're taking more than 20 million people, that is a wonderful place to be, and I will happily be back up here saying, can we build a second tunnel? But
Hadouken!
Well, any burning question before I turn it over to somebody to make a motion? Yeah? Yes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank you for working so closely with our staff, with Mike Janssen, with Mr. Rodilla. I know that was a lot of back and forth, and we really wanted, as a city, I think, to see the possibility of adding civic stations, and we really do appreciate your flexibility and your willingness to work with us on this concept. I want to also laud you on, I took the tour of the system currently operating, and I just want to say that I felt safe. Hearing that you have a 3% pass rate for all of the drivers you're hiring, and how you really are vetting the folks that are going behind those wheels, really gave me a sense of, oh my gosh, they don't just take whomever off the streets to drive and operate these Teslas, and all the drills you're going through constantly with these possible scenarios that may happen, that may intercept a tunnel or something being down, because I saw one happening, you know, your lights are flashing and you're telling your drivers, so you're preparing them, you know, and I
Oh
can really
boy,
say
we're gonna have a swell
I'm
time
very,
tonight.
very appreciative of all of the safety and top of mind of keeping all of the folks in the system safe.
Thanks.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, let's do this on your birthday.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the monorail agreement between the City of Las Vegas and TBC Boring Company.
Thank you. There's a motion. Please vote. And please post.
I think I got logged out, but I'm not.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum.
Thank you
And
very
I'm
much.
all out of
Thank you.
gum.
Hope it all works. And good luck, drivers. Good luck, drivers, and everybody else that's working on this. Let's get it going. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to agenda item 44, which is a report by Jorge Cervantes, City Manager, discussion possible action regarding a